Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another Breakfast with Blaha, and today I'm having steak, brown rice, and vegetables. Breakfast of champions right here. Alright, probably going to make a title people are going to think it's clickbaity. I'm probably going to call it something like modern bodybuilders are not this size due to steroids, which is a partially true statement. There are some who don't even use technically anabolic steroids, they just use testosterone. But that's kind of irrelevant, right? Because what are we talking about there? The androgen receptor. And here's why this matters. Because we live in a world where this allows, number one, fake natties to run even more rampant. Because people don't actually know what steroid size is. Number two, it creates a misconception that somehow these guys can use a bunch of anabolics and get to that size, and then maybe people who try to get that big do that, and then they realize this isn't working. So here's what I mean. They're using other stuff. Modern mass monster bodybuilders are the size that they are through multiple synergistic pathways of drugs. Because an individual drug, even at unlimited doses, is going to have a ceiling. It's going to have a diminished return. So what do they use? It's testosterone, IGF-1, insulin. Okay? That's what they use. And I'm not telling you it's a good idea, particularly those last two. I don't think that you should use them at all. Okay? My personal advice, I don't think anyone outside of a prescription from a doctor should be injecting those last two. And certainly not for muscle building purposes. I would never recommend it. I think it's stupid. I think it's dangerous. And I don't think anyone should be a professional bodybuilder. It's my opinion. Okay, that's it. Take it for what it's worth. You're entitled to yours. That's how I feel about it. So, that's how they get that big. And now people will say, well, what do you mean? All right, Arnold, Franco Columbu, that is steroid size. That is what good genetics using very high doses of anabolics in years under a barbell produces. Okay. That is the requirement. So again, people are going to think, well, everyone just gets jacked who you just get. Well, that's not necessarily true. Now, the thing to consider there, though, is again, quantity. Quantity and time. Those are big factors. So, I mean, you can stand there and say, well, this person I know didn't get that big. And so, yeah, but how long were they on? How many years of training did they have before they hopped on the sauce? And how much gear did they use for how long? Because, again, people have this idea that someone can build a little bit of a base and in 3 months they're going to be really jacked off gear. Right? It's not realistic. Most of the guys out there who you guys think of, oh man, that guy's got pretty big on gear, he probably has 5 or 10 years of use under his belt. He didn't do that in 12 weeks. So a lot of you guys will see some of these influencers who blow up a bunch too over time, and I'm like, oh, they must have gone on. I'm like, dude, they were on for a decade already. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? They had years of use. They upped the dose for a long time. Right? They increased what they were using by quite a bit for a year. And then all of a sudden they got quite a bit more jacked. But there's an upper threshold to that. And because of that, you got people out here who really have this impression that that people can be close to Arnold or Franco size completely natty. No, that's the extreme end for gear use. Anyone even remotely approaching their size has been on gear for a while. Right? Anyone even close, and I don't mean 1% away either. I'm talking if someone in terms of fat-free mass index is only 10 pounds of muscle less than them, that person has done some serious blasting most of the time. They didn't just do one cycle. They're sure as hell not natty. And if people don't grasp what I mean by large amounts, look, I said this before that someone, let me tell you who that someone was. I don't mind saying it. Mark Lobliner told me years ago in a phone call that when he met with Arnold, because I always said before, a person told me, and people are like, oh, who's this ambiguous person? You're full of shit. I used to do some business with Lobliner years ago. I don't anymore for obvious reasons. I said a long time ago, I don't want to do this. I have ethical issues here. That was a conversation we had, that when he talked to Arnold in person, he'd ask Arnold, how much D-bol did he took? Arnold told him, I didn't even count. I just ate it by the handful. That's what he told me. There was people who knew Mike Menzer who had said that Mike Menzer had been experimenting with 2 grams of Deca a week. 2 grams. 2 grams. All right, context here. We're talking about 2 grams of gear. All you guys out there talking about, oh, this person's on TRT. TRT is 100 milligrams, 150 tops, usually, few exceptions. 2,000 versus 100 or versus 150. That's 16 to 20 times the amount of androgens in your system. And that's normal. In today's world, a gram of test a week is like baseline. And I don't mean for serious bodybuilders anymore. I know powerlifters using 2 to 3 grams. I know plenty who aren't even stronger than me, by the way. Some of them are weaker than me. It is what it is. So you come over, you talk with the bodybuilding, and occasionally you'll get a bodybuilder and someone will say, oh yeah, I talked to this serious bodybuilder. I've met people and they're like, he says that his only anabolics are 2 grams of test. He runs 2 grams of testosterone a week. I can't believe that. And it's like, and he's just talking about his anabolics. Yes, we hear stories of pro bodybuilders using 4, 5, 6 grams a week. Dallas McCarver's autopsy suggested 10 grams. Right? We hear these stories, and they are definite. I'm sure that's pretty normal. But at a certain point, you'll read even certain forums, a lot of people are saying, a lot of pro bodybuilders are saying they cap it at about 3.5 grams. They don't seem to get any more. That's where all the other stuff comes in. All these other things that they use dramatically amplify that, because to be honest, the muscle growth gains between 1 gram versus 2 grams is pretty small, because you get such a rapid diminished returns. Yes, there will be a little more, not going to be a lot more, a little bit more. So again, you keep going higher, it's not working. And again, you're going to find you get capped at Arnold and Franco Colombo size real quick. They use these other substances to create a synergy, a synergistic effect. And it is that combination of testosterone, probably 2+ grams, IGF-1, insulin. That is how these guys get that big. They cannot get that big off the androgen receptor or testosterone anabolics. You can't. There's an upper threshold. And some of these guys have 50 pounds more muscle, 60 pounds more muscle, at least relative to height and everything, to these other very heavy steroid-using bodybuilders. And it's not because they're training harder. Because some of them, quite frankly, train like pussies. Watch them. Okay, so that's what's happening there. But the reality, because people have this misconception that, oh, that's what steroids does, that, someone who's quite a bit smaller, they must be natural because they're not that big. Okay. Again, look at the fat-free mass index stuff. No. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.